All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to We Shine Media Spotlight. I'm your host, Angela A. Love Lewis. Super excited to be back tonight because, of course, y'all know I have the best guests, people who you may know or you may not know. And that's the beauty of it because we're shining spotlights on people who are out here in these streets, whether it's virtual or real. They are out here making a difference. They are out here, changing lives and inspiring others, motivating them and encouraging them. And of course, y'all know my favorite, empowering other people to be the best version of themselves. And they do that through philanthropy, through their gifts, skills, talents. They do that through talking about who they are and what they do. And so we shine a spotlight so that you know as well. Because, of course, we all have different interests, right? And we all sometimes just may not know what's going on. But I'm telling you this, once you meet this amazing lady, this powerhouse, this woman who is out here making a difference. And when you hear her story, you're going to understand exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm not going to take a whole lot of time. I like to just jump on in and get right to it. So I want to bring to the stage none other than Miss Tracy Wilson.
Hello, hello, hello. How are you,
Hey,
beautiful?
Tracy,
What's
how
up,
are
girl?
you?
I am good. I'm good in
Listen,
these
I'm
Georgia
super.
streets.
Listen, hey, these Georgia streets are the place to be, right?
I'm trying to tell you. How you been, sister?
Well, I'm super excited to have you, Tracy. And I just put up on here, of course, just to let people know that you are Tracy Wilson. You're the founder of T&T Wilson Foundation. And for those who don't know, we're going to give them a little inside viewpoint of how this came about. I want to go ahead and you know how sometimes when people are talking, they put out disclaimers, right? And so the
Mhm.
disclaimer is that you might want to get your tissue because Tracy's story is one that is going to really pull on you and tug on you and really, have you in your feelings and really have you, just thinking about sharing, grief with her and an outpouring of love for her and what she's been through. And so just to put that out there, that this is something that I know Tracy's had opportunities to talk about many times, but at the same time, it doesn't make it easier just because you get to talk about it. But because she is a person who is looking for um, an opportunity to shed the light on what has happened in her life so that it may help somebody. And that's what I love about her is that she has that kind of heart. Everybody doesn't have it. And the strength that God has given her to share her story has really been an inspiration to so many people. And when you get to hearing some of the things that she's not only the main story, but even the strength that she has to not only go through what she goes through, but to see other people, thrive even in the midst of her hurt and pain. That's somebody amazing, somebody you need to know. And so, Tracy, I won't steal the thunder, of course, but I would love for you to go ahead and give them a little bit more about who Tracy Wilson is.
Oh, Lord. Well, my name is Tracy Wilson. I'm a Jersey girl. I'm originally from Jersey City, New Jersey. Been in Georgia, oh my Lord, 26 years now. Came down here in 1998 with a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. Um, Came down here, didn't know anybody but one person, and left
Mm.
Jersey, packed up my 4-year-old and my 6-year-old, and never looked back. I've been in, so I'm a Jersey girl, but I'm a Georgia peach, but I'm a Jersey girl, you know.
I was
Um,
getting ready to say, Tracy, now after all that time, I mean, officially, I think we might be able to say that you can, really be a piece too by way of Jersey.
mm-hmm, I didn't. I said the only way I would go back to Jersey is if my father got sick, and I would have to go take care of him. And that was later on in the journey.
Okay.
But I used to work for the World Trade Center, and what brought me to Georgia was one day on my way to work. Um, I was taking my 4-year-old to school, and this drug dealer, sorry, walked up to me and he said, "What do you need?" Now, first of all, I don't do drugs. So to walk up to me with my baby, it just sent me into a whole nother, mind frame. And I said, I don't do drugs, and I think it's disrespectful to come up to somebody and just ask them. And he said, you'll be surprised how many people look just like you on their way to work that need their morning fix. And I
Mm,
was like, that's not me. And I remember calling my dad and I said, Dad, I'm done. I can't do this. I can't raise two boys in this type of atmosphere. And he said, what you gonna do? I
right.
said, I'm going to Georgia. And I literally packed up everything I could, bought 3 one-way tickets, and never looked back.
Mm,
Never looked back. Never looked back. With a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, only knew one person, didn't have a car, didn't have a driver's license. I was, in Georgia, it's a big circle. You get on one interstate and get off the,
yeah.
so didn't know nobody but one person, and I made it work. And to this day, still here. Um, and so that was 1998. It's 2024 now. So I've been here a good, it's been a good minute. And, so you want to jump into the story, or just how you want to just jump into Terrell's story,
You
how it
know,
all.
yeah, let's go ahead and get into it because as we go, we'll pick up on some different things. I do want to start by saying that it takes a lot when you're raising kids. You want them to be in the best environment. And the streets are looking for our young men. They're looking to pull them into the streets with them. And so,
Mhm.
for you to have that, foresight, for you to say that, you know what, I'm going to take me and mine and we're getting out of here, and to go to a city, to go miles and miles, to a whole nother state, to go from the north down south,
Mhm.
takes a lot of perseverance, takes a lot of, um, balls, for lack of a better word, to,
Mhm.
to really make that journey, especially with two small boys. That says a lot for just how you felt about where you were at and your determination not to have your sons in that kind of environment.
I
So
wanted to give
you
them a
travel,
better
you only
life.
know one person
One
to give
person.
them a better life.
I wanted to give them a better life. And I did that by myself. Single lesbian mother by myself. I raised those boys by myself. I think I've had every job known to man. I've sold cars, worked in the pawn shop, MCI. Now I'm really telling my age. I've done everything, but I did it on my own. Didn't My father said when I moved down here, he said, once you get on that plane, don't look back. And I went back to visit
Mm,
6 months after I was here. I went home for Christmas. My first time catching the bus with the boys going back to Jersey from Georgia on the Greyhound. And I said, no, no,
mhm.
ma'am, I will never do that again. We gonna fly or we gonna drive. We are not getting on the bus because on Greyhound, you got to go through every city. And I was like, I can't. It took me 22
Yes.
hours to get from Georgia to Jersey with a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. I was like, I'm done. I can't do that no more. So I never looked back. I went back to visit,
Exactly.
and I stayed the course. I knew that I was determined to give them a better life, and I meant that. I was like, my kids are not going to be, like you said, they were looking for opportunities for our young men, especially in Jersey City. It's everywhere you go, it's drugs, it's this, it's that. I was like, no, I can't do this. I was born and raised in Jersey City, so I know what that life was about. I was like, not with 2 young male children. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh.
I really admire the fact that, you made a decision. And for a lot of people, that's life. We
Mhm.
know when you're in circumstances that may not be best for you. And you have a choice. Life is about choices. We don't always make the right decision, though. We don't always make the decision because it's so easy to just be comfortable. It's so easy to stay in familiarity. But you decided with only one person that you knew in Georgia to make that trip here and to start fresh. But even to go back, let's just say this, because you slid a little something in there that I don't know if everybody caught, but you said you were a lesbian mother. So not only
Mhm.
did you come down with two boys who were 4 and 6, but you were a lesbian mother as well. So
Mhm.
with all of those things that you were experiencing from where you were, coming here, let's talk about that experience. How tough was it to be a lesbian mother?
Ooh, girl. Okay, that's a good question. Um, I made it look easy. I made it look easy. I didn't wear my sexuality on my sleeve. You know what I'm saying? How people, and I had no disrespect to my people, but I'm here, I'm queer. I didn't have to do all of that. My kids knew who I was. They know, they knew what, their mother as a lesbian. They didn't care about nothing else because they loved their mother. So of course, the Georgia men don't care whether you gay or straight. They trying to holler and do all this extra stuff. And I'm like, I'm not going to confuse my children. I'm not going to have them thinking it's one way and it's totally not. They'll be like, Mom, what you doing? So I kept my private life very private. I didn't wear that on my sleeve, and I was very careful of who was around my children. I had to find a church home that accepted me. And because there was no active man in my life, my dad was the go-to for all the kids and the grandkids. But there also were men in the community that stepped up as the uncles in their life, to do things that as a mother I couldn't do, or to teach them things that as a mom, as a female, I wouldn't know, what to do. So they had the Uncle Gregs and the Eddies and the Terrences, that came in and say, hey, we're going to take them to do things that, go, you do you, and we got them. So my family, my community stepped in when they needed to step in throughout the boy's life, throughout this whole journey. I would never trade that in for anything in the world. So it was a challenge, but it was worth it to give them, the life that they needed. I wanted to be a better mom to them than my mother was to me. Does that make sense?
It does.
So that was my going force. So we as parents, we go without, and the kids don't know the backstory. They don't know that the lights are due and this, that, for they just see happy, and that's the environment that I created, whether it was a struggle for me or not. Taekwon and Terrell didn't witness none of that. They didn't know, well, mommy couldn't pay the light bill, or mommy didn't eat because it was just enough just for them, So those are things that I just kind of, I just went into survival mode and just did what I needed to do.
I'm telling you, I'm loving how the things getting ready to unfold, because of course you and I have worked together on the project, so I know some of the backstory, and I know people will get opportunity to actually read about that, because as I said, Tracy is founder of T&T Wilson Foundation, but she's also an author, and she shared her story on some different podcasts, and also written about it. And so some of the things that we're not gonna tell you everything, because you're gonna get the book and read about it, but
That's right.
at the same time, knowing that it is a process for any mother, for a female period, to come and leave from her home to come to a place where she only knows one person, but then you bring along not one child, but two children, and then you bring in two children with at a very early age. So it wasn't like you had teenagers that could come and get jobs and do all those things. You were out here making it work by yourself, without a strong male presence. So you were being able to get people who wanted to be involved to help you raise your son. So let's fast forward, because you had Taekwon was the oldest, right?
Taekwon was my oldest, and Terrell was the baby. So
okay, and so
go ahead.
I was going to say, and so in coming in and getting and raising them here in Georgia, Terrell was he was a child who enjoyed the sports life, so he had a pretty active career, correct?
Terrell was my football. Well, they both were athletic, but Terrell was my football star, and Taekwon was my wellness, fitness, runner, all of that. But Terrell was the football player.
Okay.
So
got it.
So Terrell was 14. We fast forward to 2007, freshman in high school. Just got into high school, did the athletic sports in the summertime, the little league, and when I tell you, I did not want him to play because he was so little. And I was just like, I don't want my baby to play no football, because he was little. And
Right.
the coaches was like, you got to let him be a man. We understand you if that's what he want to do. We going to make sure that he's fine. And his very first practice in
Mm-hmm.
Little League, he got hurt. The helmet hit him in the eye. And I was like, no,
Mm.
I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And he just was like, Mom, I want to play football. So I was like, powerless, like, just like, oh my God, my baby gonna hurt himself. So um
Right.
he was, God, I want to say an offensive lineman. That was it. And he wasn't
Mm-hmm.
like the quarterback, but he, of course I had to raise hell. I could say that, right? I could raise, you're gonna put my baby in here because I'm paying all this money. I need y'all to put my baby at some point. And
Right.
so
Right.
he was happy about playing football. He was number 12 for the Little League and then number 56 at Collins Hill High School in Lawrenceville. And
Okay.
so 2007. Um, Sometimes it's hard to start it because it's just like it's as much as I
Mm-hmm.
talk about it, it's just kind of it still grabs you. And of course, like Angela said, there are disclaimers for both of them. Taekwon's is a little bit more in depth. And Terrell's was, but it's still a disclaimer. So if it's a very sensitive topic for you, we understand. There's no love lost if you have to tune out once I get started.
Yeah.
So September 15, 2007, my baby was 14 years old. And most of the time it was either the three of us or one of the two of us, either me
Mm-hmm.
and Terrell or me and Taekwon, or all three of us. This particular weekend, Taekwon was with his best friend and Terrell was home with me. So Terrell went to a football game and they didn't play that night. And he we went to eat and did our normal mom son thing, and we were talking about
Mm-hmm.
homecoming, and we were fussing because he wanted to wear jeans and sneakers to homecoming, and I was like, no, you're gonna wear nice little pants, you're gonna dress. No, Mom, I want my own style. And I was like, okay, fine.
Right.
And he kissed me and he went to bed and I went to bed. So about 2 o'clock in the morning, he bust through my door and he said, I'm thirsty. And I was like, okay, it was weird that he just the way he bust in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked, could he have a Sprite? And so I gave him a Sprite, but he drank it like it was water. And you can't drink soda like in one
Right.
gulp.
Right.
So I'm looking at him and my motherly instincts kicked in. So I sit up on the bed and he's like, give me another one, give me another one. And I was like, no, we're not going to drink another soda. You want some water? He kept saying he was thirsty. I didn't know what was actually going on. So Terrell was the
Right.
kind of child, when he got hurt or when he was upset, he didn't want me to see him upset. So he closed off every room. He closed off my bedroom door, closed off his room door, and he was in the bathroom. So I could hear him, but I couldn't see him. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
sitting on the edge of the bed and I'm listening because I'm just listening to what he's doing. So I hear a little bit of moving around in the bathroom
Mm-hmm.
and I open the door to my bedroom and I hear this loud, like, bump. So I
Mm-hmm.
bust into the bathroom and he's like laying on the floor, but then he jumps up. So I'm like, Terrell, are you okay? He was like, Mom. And so he said this to me like 3 times. He said, Mommy, I'm okay. And I was like, no, you're not. So at this point, I get on the phone with 911 because I don't know what's going on. So then he falls again. And this time he hits his face on the side of the sink. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
going through, oh Lord, what's going on with my baby? Like, I don't understand
Mm-hmm.
what's happening. So I'm walking the dispatcher through what I'm seeing. And I'm like, he's going in and out of conscious. He keeps telling me that he's okay. He's holding on to, like, hears my voice. So every time I say something to him, he responds. And
Right.
so the lady asked me to pull him out of the bathroom. And so I pull him out the bathroom and she's asking me, do I know CPR? I was like, he's not doing any of that yet. So she says,
Right.
walk me through what he's doing. I said, he's just kind of going in and out of consciousness. And then that last thing, he looked at me and he said, Mommy, I'm okay. And I started crying because no, he was not okay. So at that
Right.
moment, his chest kind of blew up and then deflated, like, And so by
Mm-hmm.
this time, I'm screaming because I could see all of this happening. I'm like, I don't know what's going on with my son. Somebody needs to get here. Now, where we lived at, the hospital right around the corner, but it felt like it was taking them forever to get there. The ambulance gets there. There, all this commotion. They put me in the car, and I read on the screen. The screen says 14-year-old boy, cold blue. I know what that means, but it hasn't registered. So I called Danielle in Jersey, and I read her. I said, look, I'm in the ambulance with Terrell. And she was like, what's going on? And I read her the screen, and she starts yelling. So I hang up the phone because at that point, I couldn't handle it. So they're working on them. They're trying to do everything they can in the ambulance. We go to the hospital. We're there at the hospital. Now, mind you, I'm still numb. So I'm there, but I'm not there. Like I'm just like, what is happening? Like, is this what is going on? And I call my dad. I call everybody in Jersey, and everybody's kind of screaming and yelling. By now, the neighbors are coming to the hospital because they know, it was like a community. We all were family. Their kids were my kids were their kids. And so once they pronounce him gone, the cop says, do you have any more children? And I say, yeah, he's at his best friend's house. Please don't tell him anything until he gets, to me. And so by now it's the entire block is at the emergency room. They're in there. Everybody's crying. My son Taekwon walks in the room, and he skims the room, and he says, Mom, where's Terrell? And I can't tell him that, his brother. And so my neighbor says, you have to tell him. Can't nobody else tell him this, Tracy, And I was like, I don't want to tell him, straight face, like I'm talking to you. That's exactly how I was with him. And he notices something's wrong because everybody's in tears. And he says, Mom, where's Terrell? And then I tell my 16-year-old child at the time that his baby brother has just died. And then that's when it hit me that I just lost my child. Mind you, he was already gone in my arms. He told me, Mommy, I'm okay. But his last words to me was, Mommy, I'm okay. And that was his way of saying, I'm okay, Mom. Don't worry about me. I'm okay. But it didn't register to me. Whew. So Terrell was 14 when he died. And my son, Taekwon, was 16. So it was all over the news. They wanted to run all these tests because, of course, they thought I did something, it was negligence on my part. And so they were like, no. And he died from an aorta dissection, which is the main artery to the heart. So the aorta runs from your heart to your stomach. And if you're not looking at it on an EKG, you won't find that particular artery if you're not actually looking for it. And it's rare that you find it in children. And that is that's what they said when they pronounced him dead. So here I am in Georgia. A third of my pie is gone. Now I got to do a new normal for me and a 16-year-old who just lost his brother. But let me take it back a little bit. So the day before Terrell passed away, Taekwon and Terrell had an argument. And Taekwon said, I wish I was the only child and I wish you was dead. And then the next day, his brother dies. So
Jesus.
he carried that, he carried because he thought those words killed his brother. And I didn't find that out till like 6 months later when I had to get him into therapy because he had spiraled out of control. This is Taekwon. Right. But to be 16 and lose your baby brother, and then to know that you had an argument with your baby brother and some of the words that you spoke came into, manifested, and he believed that he literally killed his brother. For years, he held on to that. he held on to that.
Mm,
And
mm, mm. And I want to put a pin right there, Tracy, because for so many people, we say things,
mhm,
and in the heat of the moment, yes, you may be mad and you say things, but in the reality scheme of things, you really don't want that to happen.
mhm,
But
mhm,
when in his case that it happens, how can a 16-year-old process something that was said in the heat of the moment to actually become true?
mhm,
That is a weight that even adults can't handle.
mhm.
So to be a young man losing his brother, knowing he said that, to be a mother who has lost your youngest child, you're dealing with your own grief, not even knowing that they had this type of altercation where words were said to that degree. So
Mhm.
you're trying to process. You're looking at him trying to process, not knowing that not only does he have the grief and the loss of his brother, but to deal with words that were expressed
Mhm.
that can't be taken back,
Yep.
and that's weighing on him too. But I want to bring it back even further because when we talked about Tracy leaving, one of the things that we didn't get into is that when you mentioned about being a lesbian mother, when you were first pregnant, your family, you all went through something, even in you having Taekwon
Mhm.
before you
Mhm.
even had Tyrell. So
Mhm.
you've already went through a battle to get your boys to grow up, to be together, to have a relationship.
Yep.
How
Yep.
did that impact you? If you want to share a little bit about just even that piece of the story, because we kind of jumped in there and we
We
gut
jumped in
punched
there.
y'all
That's in the
because
book.
nobody
I forgot about that part. That's in the book. But um,
mm-hmm,
so when I had Taekwon, I was 18. I was still a baby myself, and I was out there in the streets. Not in the streets like but I wanted to be with my girlfriend. I ain't want to be. Not that I didn't want to be a mom, but I wasn't ready to be a mom. So my mother, she kept him. She didn't raise him. There's a difference. You know what I'm saying? So I was at all the appointments I did, but she kept him
right,
because I was in the streets with a baby. And she was like, no, he's not going to be out here in the streets. You're going, And then me being fast, I had Terrell at 20. But it was always that piece where Taekwon always felt like I kept Terrell but didn't keep him. And that wasn't the actual case. It was a necessity to keep him safe. It was and they took it as, they saw the money, they saw, they made him feel like she didn't want you, she wanted to be out in the street. She wanted her girlfriend and
right,
stuff like
right.
that. So it was challenging in the beginning because all of that happened right before I moved to Georgia. So I got him back, and this is when we all together. So it was always those battles of I had to do extra with Taekwon to make him feel, like he wasn't, I know he felt like I didn't want him. And when I say I had to deprogram him to those thoughts, because he used to act out to Terrell because Terrell
Mm-hmm.
was always with me and he wasn't. So that took a minute to kind of get him to understand. It wasn't
Yeah.
until maybe he was 23, 24 when Danielle actually had a conversation with him and basically told him, no, that's not how that went. This is how this, so it was well into his adulthood that he resented me and Terrell, because he always felt like I loved Terrell more than I loved him. And that wasn't the actual case. I mean, I was 18. I thought I was grown, but I wasn't, and I was out there in them Jersey streets and I'm running behind some chick, honey. So we all had those stories, but I was running
Right,
behind a chick with the baby. So my
right.
mother was like, no, what we not gonna do, he not gonna be out in the street 9-10 o'clock at night and he 6 months old and you out here chasing all what you doing. So it was a hard choice, but it was worth like seeing them kind of bond and try to get it together, but it was always in my head, like, does he really still feel like I loved one more than I loved the other? And that wasn't the actual case. But
That
to
is the
find out.
dynamic. That is the
Mhm.
dynamic. I think that,
Yeah.
plays a big part too, because you think about it and the human nature, when you think about, parents having children, and you say, okay, well, my grandmother raised me, but now you have another child and you're raising him. You don't
Mhm.
know the stories that people tell children. You don't know the
Yeah.
things that they overhear in conversations, and their young minds are too young to process, so they
Mhm.
don't understand,
Mhm.
why this happened. And to fast forward to have a relationship, to be with you and his brother, y'all are in the same household, doing life together, but you in anger because for years you felt some type of way, regardless of how much you showed him, how much you overcompensated. Y'all know, even as adults, we still can feel some type of way about the things that were said or done when
Mhm.
you're a child. It's
Mhm.
hard to overcome that. You have grown men in their 60s who still cry because they feel like their father wasn't in their lives. So
Yeah.
you know that words have power.
Mhm.
And when you grow up in situations, the fact that he dealt with that somewhere in his mind, to be able to say that to his brother and then that happened, had to be devastating,
Yeah.
had to be traumatizing,
Yeah.
had to be a weight that he carried, knowing that maybe I've been resentful for my brother for years.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
now the one thing that I say, I didn't mean that.
Yeah.
I just said that because I want to hurt him, because I felt hurt a lot of times in my life. It hits differently
Mhm.
from that scenario. So fast forward to when you found out that he said that. How was that conversation? How did that go to understand that you thought he was grieving without realizing the magnitude of his grief?
I was devastated because it came out in therapy, and people don't think that therapy works sometimes, but it helped um with us. And it came out, and he was doing sessions by himself, and then we had a mother son session, and the therapist wanted him to open up and tell me the calm down. This is 6 months after Terrell has passed away. We have buried him. I'm creating this new normal for me and my son, and this comes up. So to hear him, he read it to me. What he read it in, like, in a note, and he said, "What you didn't know was the day before Terrell passed away, he and I had an argument, and those words, and tears, just because I didn't know." And
Mm-hmm.
I had to sit there. I had to sit with that. So now, as a mom, I really got to bench my grief because I got to get him through that weight that he carrying. And that was probably the most hardest from age 16 to 21, because when he turned 21, he decided he was grown and he wanted to leave. But from 16 to 21, those were the hardest years of getting him through, because he spiraled out of control. He was, just trying to fill that void and compensate for the things that that he had said, that guilt that he was carrying. And it was
Right.
very hard to see him just spiral. He just spiraled. And as a mom, I felt so powerless. That was the second time in my life as a mother I felt powerless. I felt powerless. No, it's three times, but that first time was when Terrell died in my arms, and there was nothing that I can do. There was no nothing. And then from that age 16 to 21, when Taekwon was spiraling out of, and there was nothing, nobody could reach him, not even my father, my nephews, the community, nobody. And to watch that, and there was nothing, I just was a praying mother. I just covered my son, was
Jesus.
like, God, please just cover him. When he was staying with me, and then when he went on his own, I was like, no, I don't even want you to go on your own. Like, I want you to stay under my. And he was like, no, I want to go, I want to be out. And at the time he had a girlfriend and she had an apartment, and I was just like, oh my Lord, 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 Lord. And so from 16 to 21, he was gone. And then he came back. He was 26. I had to have surgery in 2018. So he came, so he was out. I knew where he was, but there were times when we didn't speak for months because he was just being grown. And he was like, you got to let me live and you got to let me breathe.
Right,
So I
right.
had a full hysterectomy in 2018. And he had to come back because now the son has to take care of the mom. Right. So this was July of 2018. Came back home. And he stayed with me. And I was happy because my son was home and I knew where he was every night. I was looking at him, and soon, how you come home, I done cooked all this food,
Right,
eat all
right.
this food, and he came home and I knew where he was every night. I didn't have to worry about who he was with, what he was doing.
Yeah,
I had somewhat control of the situation, even though he was grown and, but he was under my roof. So I had a little bit of control of
exactly.
what was going on. So I had this hysterectomy in July. And anybody who knows me, because I got to tell this part of the story.
Right, right.
Anybody who knows me knows that I am a big Prince fan. I go in for Prince. And so there was this little boy named Caden. And Caden was diagnosed with brain cancer, right? So Caden was diagnosed when he was 3. They gave him until he was 8 to live. When I met him, he was 10. So this little boy is on Facebook and he's singing all these Prince songs, and he's we're called the Purple Family. So the Purple Family is like, who is this little boy? And so, like I said, I had a full hysterectomy. I'm on bed rest. So I'm bored. So Facebook had become my go-to, and, Instagram and everything like that. So I seen this little boy and I reached out to his mother, and, I heard the story and it just did something to my heart. And I was like, oh, wow. So I asked his mother, I said, with him having cancer, with him being a Prince fan, has he ever gone to Minnesota? Because that's where Prince is from. And she was like, no, Make a Wish sent him to Disney World and everything like that. And I said, okay. So I wrote his name on a piece of paper and I went to sleep. And when I woke up, God had given me the vision, Caden's Big Adventure. So this is July of 2018, leading into 2019. So I posted it on Facebook and I was like, why not do a fundraiser and send him, his twin brother, his mother and father to Minnesota? We'll do it big. Celebration is in April. We'll plan it now all the way to April. So from my bed, I did a whole event from Georgia to Minnesota, raised over $7,000 for a complete stranger that I never met. Right?
Wow.
I put the vision out there. Everybody was all for it. On the phone, we got in touch with different artists that used to work with Prince, SeaWorld. We had a whole big to-do thing, big meet and greet at the airport. Everything is going good. So that's going July all the way into 2019. Here we are. It's April 2019. Right? So we're scheduled to be in Minnesota April 21st, 2019. So April comes around, a couple of days before we're supposed to be, Taekwon says, Mom, when you get to Minnesota, I want you to FaceTime me because I want to see the little boy that I'm sharing my mom with.
Right.
And it took me back because I was like, oh God, is he feeling some kind of way? Because, like that whole winter, he said, no. He said, I do not feel any kind of way. He said, I'm so proud of you. He said, all these purple people out here, this is your shit. You own it. That's just what he said.
Right,
And he was like, I don't mean to curse, Mom, but this is, you own it because nobody else thought to do this. And here you are, you were on bed rest and you created this whole thing for this little boy. Like, own it, and because I was in my head like, oh, I don't want him to feel like, revert back to how he was
Yeah,
feeling when he wasn't in the house with, Terrell.
exactly.
He didn't feel that way. So April 8th, and this disclaimer is really, we have to put this out there because Taekwon's death is a little bit more horrific than Terrell's was.
Right.
So April 8th, my son had a breakdown, and his job called me, and they said, Taekwon's having some kind of break. Would you be mad if we took him to the hospital? And I said, I would be mad if you didn't, because I couldn't get to him and I'm at work. So you guys need to get my child to safety. Whatever. We don't know. They didn't know what was going on. So he had a psychotic break, April 8th. He went to the hospital. They put him on 4 different antidepressants, 4 in 4 days.
Wow.
And they released him on the 12th. So he went in on the 8th. They put him on 4 different antidepressants. They released him on the 12th. He was diagnosed with bipolar schizophrenia. And April 16th, he was hit by a train.
Jesus.
All right, let's take a minute. So within a 4-day span, he went in the hospital on the 8th. They put him on all this medication. They released him on the 12th, and he died on the 16th. So my motherly instincts had kicked in. So the night that he died, I found out 24 hours later. The night that he died, I had a dream about him. And in my dream, my sister says, you need to get back to Georgia, because I was in Minnesota in the dream. She said, you need to get back to Georgia because there's something going on with Taekwon. This is the dream. And I said, I'm here with Kaden. What's going on? She said, no, you need to stop what you're doing, get to Georgia. So I touched ground in Georgia in the dream. And when I touched ground in Georgia, Taekwon had died. This is in the dream.
Oh my God.
So I jumped up and I realized that he wasn't home. And I didn't panic because they did a lot of open to closes, and I knew he was with his best friend. And I went to work. And so my mother, I was texting him and he wasn't responding. So that was an indication that something was wrong, because he would always hit me back with something.
Right.
And I remember sitting in the office and I said, I gotta go find my son, because it's not like him not to respond to 3 of the messages. And it was between 7 and 9 o'clock in the morning. And they were like, go ahead, the store gonna be here, don't worry about it. I go look for my son and didn't. I called everybody, called his friends, called the girls, the main one, your name, they name, everybody, and nobody seen him. So I called 911 and I said, my son, he has not responded to any of my text messages. His name is Tracy Wilson. I can't find him. He was released from the hospital. He's on all these antidepressants. I just need to find him. So at this point, they know that he's passed away because it's come up in the system. So some kind of way, he didn't have anything on him, Angela. He had his debit card and my name was tattooed across his chest, right? So there's a big Tracy across his chest. So whatever happened, some kind of way, they realized that I was his mother. And where I lived at, it was a small town. Everybody knew everybody. They knew that I was the manager at Dollar General. And so the dispatcher said, we're sending someone to your house. And so when the officer got there, I asked him, I was like, what are you doing here? And he was like, it's about Taekwon. So in my head, I'm thinking he done got locked up. Let me go get some money so I can get my baby out of jail. And he said, no, there's been an accident. Taekwon was hit by a train. And my response was, not again. And the pastor that was with him said, wait a minute, what do you mean not again? And the officer said, yeah, she lost her youngest son in 2007 and now her oldest son. And so here I am again, numb. Now the news has spread. Everybody's at my house. and the sounds of the train is making me crazy. Now, mind you, I have lived in that apartment for 4 years prior to that. And the
Wow.
trains go by every 30 minutes. But for
Mm-hmm.
some reason, it was more intense. Just the horns blowing, to the point where they would have to put my head underwater because it was just too much. I couldn't take it. And to this day, sometimes I hear that train and it still shakes me a little bit
Mm-hmm.
5 years later. Um, so I'm here. It's 5 days before I'm supposed to be in Minnesota. I've got this huge event, and my child is gone.
Right.
And so the funeral home calls me and they say, Miss Wilson, we have him. You won't be able to see him until Tuesday. He's in the deconstruction phases.
Right.
In my head, what is that? What do you mean? What does that? What does that mean?
Right.
And so they were instructed not to tell me anything by a friend of mine who was Taekwon's mentor, a former Atlanta Police Department officer, was like, do not show her any crime scene pictures, do not give her any information into what
Right.
is going on. But I did have a hater, and and the hater used to work with me. And I walked in the store and she said, do you know that the Godiva dogs had to go and find
Oh,
parts of Taekwon's body?
are you serious?
And I looked at her and I said, what? And she said it again. And so I said, I watch enough crime shows, Law and Order, all of that, to know what a Godiva dog does and
Right.
what they do. So do you hear yourself? You're telling me that dogs had to find parts of my son's body. And the
Mm.
cashier at the register said, you got to be the dumbest person on the planet to tell somebody that just lost their child that was hit by a train that a dog is finding body parts. So
Mm.
it took the strength of God for me not to not to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I did not know that. I would have never known that. And you're having a conversation with me. So I was pissed. And it was somebody from City Hall that gave her that information. And so I went to City Hall, like, why are you guys disclosing this information to people that's not even related to me? These are people that work for me. So why are you guys having this conversation? And they was like, Miss Wilson, wait a minute. It's not this City Hall. It was in another city. I said, I don't care. And I went to the officer that came to my house. He said, give me the person's name, and I guarantee you they won't have their job by the time I'm done. And so they went and they found out who it was. They lost their job because that was something that you shouldn't be disclosing that information anyway.
Right.
But I've never seen any crime scene. I don't want to see any pictures. I didn't know all of that. And I was okay with not knowing until that particular day.
Right.
And so the funeral home said, there's nothing we could do. He's in the deconstruction phases. And I remember sitting on the bed because I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go to Minnesota. I didn't want to leave my son. And I remember sitting on the bed and I had a full-fledged conversation with Taekwon in the spirit. And he said, Mom, you got to see it through. You got to see it through. And I was like, Taekwon, I'm not leaving you. I'm not. Mom, you got to see it through. And it was something I was listening to on the radio. I can't remember what it was. And it was like, God said, okay, you can't, you go ahead and go. So nobody knew that I was flying into Minnesota. Now, you live in Georgia. You got to take the train to the plane.
Mm-hmm.
The strength that I had to just get on that train by myself. It was God, right?
Absolutely.
And I got to Minnesota and I went live from the Minnesota airport. And nobody knew. Poor Caden thought I wasn't coming. He was devastated because he called me his best friend. His mother knew, but we surprised him when he got in the airport. So for 2 days, I spent 2 days with Caden, and it was much needed for me
Yeah.
as well as it was much needed for him. And then the family came. They drove from Pittsburgh to Georgia to my son's funeral.
Mm, mm,
Complete strangers.
wow.
Complete, you know, we had within 5-10 days, complete
Right.
strangers, and now we're like family. Caden and Landon will be 16 years old this year. You
Wow.
know, his mother and I are like best friends, and that it was just I needed that moment away, um, because now it's just me.
Exactly.
Now I got
Now,
to do a
look at
whole new normal
new
just
normal.
for me.
Yeah.
So there are moments when I say, and that survivor's guilt is real, because I say things like, I brought my boys down here to give them a better life. And then sometimes I feel like I gave them death. That if it may, not that I gave them death, but I brought them down here to give them a better life. But I don't know how to word it, but sometimes that's how I feel, like I failed them as a mother because they're both gone. You know, um,
Yeah.
yeah, that survivor's guilt, it gut punch you every now and again.
Yeah.
How you
It's
doing? You
such
all
a
right?
difficult. Yeah, it's such a difficult story, for those who are tuned in and listening. I can't imagine, um, what you're thinking and how you're feeling just listening to um, Tracy be able to share, what has happened with not one, but both of her children. And with Taquan's story being so traumatic, with the way he was, how he lost his life. And to know that even in the midst of her son being dead and planning that funeral, she still honored her commitment to go and celebrate with Caden, because he was part of the Purple family, and she had planned such a beautiful thing, to honor him because he was dealing with his own cancer diagnosis. And so, there's no words. I don't really know what words that anyone can say to you, even years after the fact, you know. But I will say this: I hope that at some point, some part of you understands that in leaving one place to give your sons a better life, that you will understand that even though they both lost their life, the life that happened prior to that, where they were together and they were with you, was probably worth more than anything that would have happened had you stayed. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that, God, he always knows, what's going to happen. He always knows the plans. And so, don't question or beat yourself up or think that, that decision was not a good decision, because God already knew. He already had it worked out. So, whatever, we can't go back hindsight. We can't see the alternative future. Had you stayed, what would have happened? Maybe something even more horrific would have happened. Who knows? But the fact that your intentions were pure to give your sons a better life, your intentions were pure to have your oldest and youngest be raised together, to be their mom. And that's what you did until the last breath that either one of them took. And not only that, but even in your grief, you were able to step up and still do something for somebody else. So, for those who are listening, you mentioned having a new normal. Our new normals don't always be in alignment with what we think they're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you created the foundation. Can you share with everybody, what prompted you to go ahead and create the foundation for the boys?
Okay, so it was originally called the Terrell Wilson Foundation, where we dealt with matters of the heart. So
Mm-hmm.
when Terrell passed away, I wasn't CPR trained. I didn't know what was going on. So I said, I single-handedly started my own nonprofit by myself. I did everything by myself. Did the bylaws, articles of incorporation, secured the 501c3, one woman show by myself. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want another parent to go through what I went through.
Right.
So I teamed up with the American Heart Association and I became a CPR instructor. I would do CPR classes. We would go into the schools to make sure that the AEDs are working, different things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then when Taekwon died, I had to restructure it. I had to go into CEO mode. So I changed it from the Terrell Wilson Foundation to the T&T Wilson Foundation, where we deal with matters of the heart and mind. So not only am I dealing with your heart, I'm also dealing with your mind. So with that, in March of this year, we had the HB 874 bill pass, which means that every school in Georgia, from daycare on up to college, has working defibrillators, AEDs in the schools. CPR instructors are on site because a lot of our children are passing away from undetected heart conditions that the parents are not aware of. So to be a part of that was amazing. We sat on the state capitol with Governor Kemp and Matt Ryan, and it took a minute for it to come to fruition, but to be a part of that, it was like my work is not in vain. So
Absolutely.
the next bill I'm working on trying to get passed is a mental health bill. I want to call it Taekwon's Law
Mm-hmm.
because 4 days is not enough time for medication to regulate your system. So
Right.
I want at least 14 days that, if it's not working, if it's too strong, so that's what I'm really working on now. I got my work cut out for me because there's so many different spectrums to mental health,
Right.
um,
Absolutely.
and even doing this, I have to take care of my own mental health. I have to take, I'm not on any medication. I have not been on any medication in both of my children's death. I mean, the doctor has prescribed everything to me, but it's God's grace and just my faith that has been keeping me sane,
Right. Right.
to sit down and talk to another parent who just lost a child, or to bury one is enough, but
Yeah.
to bury two, that is the hardest thing in this journey. Is
Mm.
like I have moments where recently I miss being a mom, I miss being needed, you
Right.
know um and so to lose my boys, and then a year and 2 months after burying my only child, I lose my father next
Mm.
year in 20.
Right. Right.
So it's been a lot of losses, but
Yeah.
it's God's grace and mercy that's been keeping me and keeps me going. I'm going to go to the cemetery at some point this week because I don't go often because it's too much. It was too much with one. It
Right.
really is too much but I need some time with them.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing this weather is, so Georgia weather is just, so I probably need to go first thing in the morning,
Right.
because when it's not too hot, but then when you go at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's hot. But I
That's right.
said that this week I was going to go and just change out their flowers and just have some time with them, just to kind of center myself. I don't go.
Right.
I used to go all the time. I used to go 2 or 3 times a week, but it's too much.
Right.
So I'm down to maybe a couple of months, because it's heavy, because I got to wear that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's hard to come out of it some days, so I got to be careful because like I said, I got to take care of my own mental health myself. So
So true.
I said I was going to go sometime this week and go sit with the boys.
Well, Tracy, we can only say how much of a huge gratitude we have for you to share your story, because I know it can't be easy. I don't care if you tell it 1,000 times. It's never going to be easy because of the fact that you have to live and move on with life without your sons. But what you have done is turn your pain into a foundation that can help somebody else, and to fight for those laws to be changed. Because you're absolutely right. 4 days is not enough. And
Mm-mm,
in both of your sons' cases, with an aortic dissection, is not something that you would have been aware of.
mm-hmm,
To have a diagnosis of mental illness. Sometimes those are not things that you automatically see, especially if people get good at, hiding it, or they stay away. You can just hear them when, they're doing well. And so, you've been given a heavy mantle to wear, but the fact that you're out here still fighting for others, still fighting, to have laws changed so that somebody else, another mother or father, doesn't have to go through what you went through. And so if you would let people know, because we're right at an hour, but let people know how they can connect with you, how they can help support you in the foundation. What can they do?
Um, well, my website is under construction because I'm working on some things. You know how you always changing things, but there is a foundation page on Facebook. It's called the T&T Wilson Foundation group page, as well as the actual public figure page. I am Tracy Wilson on Facebook, and Jersey Doll 50 underscore Jersey Doll 1 underscore 50 at Instagram. But if we're friends on Facebook, you can like, share the post. I could be reached at the TNT Wilson Foundation at gmail.com if you have any emails, if you have any questions for right now. But again, the Facebook page is the TNT Wilson Foundation group page and TNT Wilson public figure page.
Listen, everybody, make sure that you reach out and support the foundation. Tracy has tirelessly put things out there, in honor of her sons. And so, we definitely want to, be able to sow seeds and whatever else can be done to help. Again, it takes a lot of time and energy and finances to change laws. And so, she's out here doing what needs to be done. And so, Tracy, prayers to you. And wishing you much success with the foundation and all the things you're doing behind the scenes to ensure that, somebody else's journey or their new normal is not, the pathway that yours went down. And so we just thank you again for being on here and sharing your story, and for having the courage to continue to put Tyrell and Taquan's life out here, because like you said, even though they're not here, you're keeping them alive, their memory. You're honoring them by keeping their memory alive, and doing something that is in some way giving back as a result of the lives that they did live. And so anything you want to say before we close the broadcast out?
Oh, thank you for having me. That's interesting that you said that, because somebody I used to work with asked me, did I have a cash app for the boys, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it's a weird question, but like it just random. And I was like, yeah. And I said, so the cash app it's Wilson Boys Legacy. And I just rattled it off, and she started crying. And I said, why are you crying? She said, because you're even in your tag, you're keeping your boys' legacy alive. And I didn't pay it any attention. It was weird that you just said that about the legacy. And I was like, yeah, it's Wilson Boys Legacy, because no matter what, I'm gonna forever speak their names, no matter what I do.
Let me make sure this is right. Wilson Boys Legacy, is that correct? $.
Yep.
Wilson Boys
Mm-hmm.
Legacy.
That's it.
Okay. So this is an opportunity for those who want to help sow seeds as Tracy is moving forth with the foundation to continue to keep the legacy alive. Because again, they were here, they live life, and as a result, matters of the heart, matters of the mind. Those are two things that people go through. And it takes a village to make things happen. And so support through Wilson Boys Legacy, so that Tracy can continue to put Tyrell and Taquan's memory out there and help somebody else. And I'm sure, just as she stood in the gap for Kaden, let's stand in the gap for her and her sons and make a difference. Tracy, thank
Don't
you
make
again.
me cry.
Don't cry. But
I
y'all
went
make
all this
sure.
time without crying. Don't do it.
Look, make sure y'all go $. Wilson Boys Legacy. I know this will be on Total Entertainment Radio, so we want to make sure for those who won't be able to see it, but Cash App is $Wilson Boys Legacy. Make sure you sow a seed. I'm sure Tracy will be so grateful and appreciative of that. And I tell you, we just pray that you continue. God continues to give you strength to pursue the foundation and all those things that have helped you to this point to continue to, put out there fighting for the laws and sowing seeds and the things that you do, just to keep them, their memory alive and honor them. That's being an amazing mom. And one thing, y'all got to read the books because she's got, a book out there, some books out there. Read the books and purchase those. That helps as well. One of the things that she didn't say, but she did mention she was a Prince fan. And one of the things the boys used to say is that she is the most beautiful girl in the world. So as a tribute to Prince, y'all remember that as you continue to help, keep Tracy in your prayers and uplift her as she's out here making a difference, being the most beautiful girl in the world and making a difference. Tracy, thank you again for
Thank
being
you
a
for
part.
having me.
Absolutely. Until next week, you all take care. But again, make sure Wilson Boys Legacies, sow a seed on Cash App and follow Tracy so that you know where she's going, what she's doing, and how you can continue to help her make a difference. Y'all take care.